Hello, everyone. This is Scarlett Johnson, Moms for Liberty Unplugged, and I'm here with my friend and guest, Meg Brock, and we're going to discuss her most recent article with the Daily Caller. But first, we were just talking about tomorrow that I think if all things go well, I'll be on Fox and Friends in the morning, and they gave me the time frame 6 to 10 a.m.
Oh, jeez.
You've been on, right? Like do you get the same like window where you have to kind of sit and be ready and you're not sure what time it's going to be?
I don't know if I've ever had that long. That's a long time to be ready to go on live television for. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
So I'll have to get up at 4 in the morning and make sure that everything's good. I'll get a link. I have to set up, make sure links work and all of that.
Mhm.
But I was at an event in Wisconsin, Right to Life event, where I was able to hang out for a little bit with Rachel Duffy, who does the Fox and Friends on the weekend.
Hmm.
And she's awesome. I was on her and Sean's Fox Nation show last year, where they did it out of their kitchen. And it was really, really fun and cute, and they're really nice. And Sean is from Wisconsin, and he was a congressman in Wisconsin once upon a time. So there's some Wisconsin roots there. But she follows me on X. I follow her, and I talked with her daughter Evita, who she was a reporter, and now she has her own podcast, and she's like doing really great. But she was trying to convince me to run for office, and I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
Not yet, but maybe, who knows, someday. But I'm excited to go on Fox and Friends, and I think she's awesome, and she's really nice in person too. Has 9 kids.
Wow, that's amazing.
I thought 5 kids was a lot. 9, that's a lot. But they all seem so great, and they seem like a happy couple. I just saw Sean. He was on Fox News this morning talking about there's something he's doing this summer, the Great American Road Trip. And I guess he's going to travel the whole country and stop in every state and, kind of celebrate that state. And, and road trips are fun. I haven't done one in a while, but when 5 kids young, it was way too expensive and hard to fly. So we did road trips every summer. The longest one, I took the kids on my own. My husband met up with me at the Grand Canyon, but we did Route 66. I just decided. My youngest was 3. Everyone was home, and I was going crazy. And so I thought, you know what? Let's do a road trip. And I got a book on Route 66. I'm like, we're just going to spend 2 weeks. Otherwise, we're sitting around here, and, we have the time in August, and I just decided to do it. So
I don't think you ever regret going on those trips. You never regret doing that. And I mean, a road trip to every state in America, it's like a lifelong dream. That's really, really, really cool. There's so many beautiful places in America to see.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I went these books, there's all these kitschy stops, like all these, so every, like the big astronaut, like, so they had, and it wasn't just, of course there's the obvious, like big, and you end up on the Santa Monica Pier, but there were all these little stops that they give you in this book that I had. And so we just kept stopping with the kids at these interesting places and taking pictures, and it was really fun. And so we have to do something like that again. Maybe, I don't know if I'm as ambitious to drive all the way to California and back, but
Yeah, that's probably pretty far from Wisconsin. It's fun though. Probably a lot of cool places you could stop in between you in California, I would think.
Lots.
Yeah.
We did a lot of interesting diners and, all the cool things. But
Moms for Liberty Unplugged hits the road. I can see it. Yeah.
Yes, we could.
That'd actually be super fun. You visit different chapter chairs from across the country. That'd be so cool.
That's actually kind of a good idea to like go around and visit chapters, like different chapters in each state, and really get to know. That's actually kind of a neat idea. I'll have to write that one down. But Today we're discussing your article, and so why don't you set it up? I'll real quick. We can take. I always forget to take that off. We didn't need to have that intro.
It's a good slide though. I understand why you want to have it on. It looks very cool.
It was a great picture my friend took, and you know, photoshopped it really nice for me.
It looks beautiful, and I love it. It's cool. I love the idea of being unplugged because I think that Moms for Liberty, it's moms, and most moms understand that real life isn't necessarily a sheath dress and perfect lighting, right?
Yes,
Most of us are.
that's sort of the version that you're, when you put out these like the really cool like thumbnail picture, and then here's like I actually slept in this shirt.
Yeah, I didn't really do my hair this morning. We were at a swim meet till late last night. I'm like, oh man, it is what it is. I'm not ashamed.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I slept in this shirt. This was the shirt, and I woke up and then I brushed my hair. But I did put on some makeup. I washed my face and put on makeup and brushed my teeth. So there you go, America. I brushed my
Well, you look beautiful. So
but yeah, the unplugged, yeah, just to have a general, like, have something to talk about. There's always something to talk about. But then you get off track, it's fine. Who cares? And then and then you clip go live. I like going live stream and talking for a while, and then you can clip out, make things smaller later and reuse. So it works out really good. The one thing I'm just gonna, when the StreamYard goes live, what I can't figure out yet is how to get, there's an ad for StreamYard, like $10, sign up. And I spent like an hour yesterday. I just fixed it. But trying to figure out how you get that. So if anybody knows how to get the new to streaming like thing that automatically shows up on Meta, let me know, because I could not figure it out.
I was gonna say, when you're talking about your Fox and Friends interview, that I feel like getting the links and everything set up is usually the most stressful part for me. I was getting very, very stressed that I'm not going to understand the technology, or the internet's going to drop out, or So I admire you taking the chance to understand all this stuff.
I like doing from home. I've gone into a couple times. I've gone into a local studio, and that's terrible because you can't see them. You're looking at the camera, but you can't see them. You can hear them, and you can see there's like a little tiny camera, and so you're kind of like pretending like you can see them and talk, and then it takes a lot more. You can't see yourself, you can't see them, and you're kind of looking into a camera and talking, hoping that you're getting that message across. I mean, nothing beats talking in person, but at least like this, that's what I feel like when you do podcasts, it takes a little bit to start to feel natural. And just when you start to feel natural, it's like, oh, the 20 minutes are over. We've got to end it. And I mean, and if you're doing facts or news facts, like, you're lucky if you get 5 minutes, and usually there's several other people on. So in essence, you have 30, 60 seconds to say something. And we were talking, it can be harder to do a school board speech than a one hour podcast, because you have 3 minutes, sometimes not even 2 minutes, to say something memorable, and hope that you don't. That's why you write. I always say, write out your school board speech. It's okay to read, because if you look up and you start talking, a minute's gone, and then you didn't get to your point. So.
And those kind of comments too, I don't know if I've given them and they have the ticker down where it starts at 2 minutes, and then you're like, all right, I'm at a minute, and then I'm at 30 seconds. And then you get to the very bottom, and it's like, when I was in Bucks County, theirs would start flashing red in like the last 15 seconds. And there was a great satisfaction. And when you finished your comment, like as the last second one, it always made me feel like, cherry on top. Got it done in 2 minutes. Take that.
Like, boom, like, oh my gosh, because that when I timed it, the worst is like you're like, oh darn it, can I just have 5 more seconds?
Yeah.
And I was, when I was the last time I testified in Madison, we were way outnumbered, and they must have had hundreds of speakers, and they all had signed up early. So we're waiting. And the few people we had, maybe 10, had to leave after a while. So by the time I got up to speak, there was the 5 minutes. And so I was still talking. I'm like, listen, can you just give me a few minutes here? Like, I am way outnumbered. I am the only one, with of a diversity point of view. And the whole crowd's like, oh, boo, boo, boo. I'm like, all of you talked over your time limit. And then the Democrats would always ask them a whole bunch of questions. So there'd be someone up there for a half hour who was just either a lunatic or not making any sense at all. And I think a strategy on the left is to, like, one question was asked, what is your joy? How do you find joy? And then they talk, and we're all like, come on, we just want to testify. Like, I don't want to hear about trans joy right now. And the Republicans, again,
That's quite a topic too. I'm like, oof, I won't even open my mouth there. There's a lot to unpack in those two words.
yes. But and the Republicans are, of course, like I think are, they're just trying to move things along. But I kind of was like, why don't you do the same thing? Ask me a bunch of questions. Let me talk. I know this subject. Our Moms for Liberty members know this subject. Were several other groups there that that know the subject or brought in people, some experts. So use that same tactic when you have your people up there, instead of looking at the watch thinking like, we've got to roll this along, things are running behind. You're going to be there all day anyway, because the clown cars have rolled up. The teachers unions have brought their people. All the different, in Madison, that is the headquarters of our state superintendent and the Wisconsin Department of Instruction. So they'll send their people over. Teachers will take a day off of work. Former teachers will come in. I've seen Advocates for Youth, Fair Wisconsin, G-Safe, WAC, like all of the teachers unions. I received their emails, their calls to action, and they're like, show up, we got a bus, we'll drive you, we have lunch. They get out rooms, conference rooms. They provide food, they get college kids out. And on our side, that has been.
So the organization is impressive. I mean, that's an impressive level of organization. I guess that's what they would call community organizing.
Bucks County, did you not see the same organization there?
I think that when I was advocating for kids to go back into school, I felt very surprised because we talked last week. Before COVID, I was just typical normie mom, probably like a lot of listeners, not engaged in anything. But I'm from Bucks County, which is outside of Philadelphia, and it's one of the most important swing states in the country. I mean, it was all over the news this election. And when I just got involved in pushing back with schools, I was really surprised because there was very, very, very little on the ground organization compared to, you had the ACLU representing like for the trans issue and us another school board. I mean, the people who are pushing for school closures and then gender ideology, it was very outnumbered and very in their favor in terms of the on the ground organization. And I think it was hard. It was hard for me because when you're outnumbered, and I think that local media as well is a big part of it. In the Philadelphia area, you have a bunch of really wonderful conservative talk hosts, but in terms of like print media, it was very, very one-sided. And I think it's a lot to battle against when you're being constantly painted as a quote unquote transphobe for saying, I don't think we should be taking the fertility away from young girls or removing their breasts. Again, that's not shouldn't be a controversial thing to believe, but
And
we know it is.
that was in 2022, especially, right? That's about the time, was it
Mhm.
2021, 2022? I think that we were, first of all, but at that point, I was we're talking about critical race theory. We're
Mhm.
first masks, opening schools, number one,
Mhm.
just opening up society. Then it was opening up schools, and then once they were
Mhm.
open, mitigation strategies.
Mhm.
That masks were the least of the strategies. It was the last to go, but we were dealing with that the kids were eating lunch facing the wall,
Mm.
6 feet apart. Sports could be open. If they were, the kids had to wear masks, or there was the kind of quarantine procedures, the
Mhm.
28 days if you were around somebody that tested, all that stuff.
Mhm.
So we had to, it was like one thing after another, and we were so consumed by that I I was, at George Floyd, I was aware of what was happening, the radicalization. And so
Mhm.
that was on the mind too, but we're also just trying to get things open and back to normal for kids. And then CRT, and shortly thereafter, it was suddenly gender ideology. And I find out later, my kids tell me, "Oh yeah, that stuff's been around, but for a while, but it wasn't pushed as hard. It's like a button got pressed, and it
Yeah.
went into overdrive."
I think that it went, I mean, I've done a lot of foils with this. I mean, I think it was really in like around like 2015, I'd say there was a lot of strategy and a lot of these NGOs and hospitals are really pushing towards the schools. And then, like you're saying, during COVID, I mean, we're so focused on, hey, like we need these kids to be in school. I don't want our kids to have to be vaccinated to go to school. And
Yeah.
I think what broke open the dam, and my humble personal opinion, and kind of like started to in the later 2022 is really Elon Musk buying Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly you had like the Babylon Bee earlier that year getting deplatformed for saying Rachel Levin is a man. And
Yeah.
then the later half, towards the end of 2022, when Elon Musk was, I believe that's the right time frame, was buying Twitter,
Yeah.
we were allowed to start put, sharing that stuff, and it wasn't getting taken down, and it was all there, and it was all there in the open. It just wasn't widely known. And I know I didn't really know until I remember the first time I really learned about gender ideology was hearing a Chloe Cole speech, and I remember sitting there thinking like, how is this happening in America? Like, how did this beautiful young woman have her breasts removed by doctors to quote unquote fix a mental health condition? You couldn't believe, I remember not being able to believe it. And I think people still kind of, if they don't know anything about it, feel that way. They're like, that can't even be real. And you're like, no, it is real. It's really happening.
So that was at the Heritage Foundation, right? The
I
Gen
heard she in the fall of 2022, I think it was the fall of 2022, she did a speech. I believe there was like a rally in Washington D.C. or something, and I just saw it on Twitter. I saw like her give this speech about what happened to her, and I just remember bawling. I was just absolutely bawling. I just couldn't even believe it
Yeah.
was real.
The first time I heard her speak was January 2022 at a gender ideology summit at the Heritage Foundation in
Mhm.
DC. And yeah, I was crying. I was there with a lot of the ladies that Shannon Adcock, um,
Mhm.
Kit Hart was there, a lot of Moms for Liberty friends and other organizations, legal organizations. And the first time, because I was aware of gender ideology, I had started, to see it in Wisconsin, but didn't know nearly as much then as I do now. And when she spoke, it's the first time I really heard the whole like her origin story and how
Mhm.
everything happened. And
Mhm.
since then, when I've talked to at least over 20 detransitioners and talked to them personally, and I've watched and done live streams with many others now. And the story, it's usually about the same at a certain age. Kids that had autism or they had some mental health issues, um, struggling with their identity, suffering from abuse,
Mhm.
divorce in the family, a traumatic divorce, some sort of trauma event, or it's either a trauma event or they are they're suffering from mental anguish,
Mhm.
sometimes it coupled with autism. And that's sort of the cauldron in which this ideology festers, finds kids, vulnerable kids, and
Mhm.
then kind of this seeps in. And if you had a healthy kid who has a good relationship with both parents or one parent, and that this they are maybe going to feel empathy, but they're not going to be affected by this ideology because they're comfortable in their own skin. That's why I think this is really insidious, because it really goes after vulnerable kids. I'll say a lot of detransitioners will say the weird kids, they'll actually, the last event I was at, a lot of them were wearing, they had made some badges, and they're like, weird kids matter, and just artistic,
Mhm.
different, celebrate them, and absolutely try and, bullying can happen and you want to prevent that, but convincing them that everything could be solved with gender affirming care, identifying as trans, that's wrong. And now we can bring your article,
Yeah.
because I'm going to pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It is quirkier kids, vulnerable kids, tomboys. I mean, I think that adolescence is already a difficult time for many, and it was a hard time for me. And so when you're struggling and if you have that history of abuse, you really are ripe for this kind of predatory ideology. It's so sad.
Okay, and so right here, this is your article. So RFK Jr. takes a big step to shield kids from dangerous sex change procedures. So I read this and I wanted you to kind of walk through it, because you have a such a broad, when we were in DC and you started to tell me all of the different FOIAs and all the things that you knew, I'm like, you're blowing my mind. You've done so much work on this and exposed so much. You've been on panels discussing this at CPAC. So can just explain this article and kind of give us a view of what's happening.
Yeah, so I mean, the background is that if your listeners aren't aware, that it was May 1st, HHS released this really long report. I forget how many pages. I think it was like close to 300 pages, where they did a comprehensive review of the available medical literature about treatments for gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is the diagnosis for someone who is uncomfortable with their sex or has what we would call gender confusion. And what they found is what the CAS review found a year ago. That's the report that was created by the National Health Service in England. That was also an independent review on different policies and procedures for the treatment of gender dysphoria in children. And what HHS found is that basically they said, we think is the medical community is really failing kids, that treatments like puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, sex change surgeries don't show don't really show that there's any benefits, but there's a really huge risk of harm. And I think that's all pretty common sense. I mean, I don't think, I said this to people, like, you don't really, if you need a scientific study to convince you that it's wrong to sterilize a teenage girl or give her experimental treatments that could sterilize her or remove her breasts, I don't know if we're going to convince you. But again, this report came out and it was fantastic. And so what happened this week, Thursday, HHS, I'm sorry, was it Thursday? It was Wednesday. I'm losing track of the days of the week. HHS released this letter RFK wrote that was really calling on the medical community, the healthcare community in America to follow the lead of Europe, frankly. We see European countries, we see Sweden, we see England. They're pulling back and they're restricting these sex change procedures for kids because they're recognizing that the science shows that this is not helping, it's hurting. And it's extremely experimental. And so they really called on the American medical community to read this report that was released in May and to rethink their protocols, and to stop. It was a really bold call to action that is really necessary. And unfortunately, the American medical community, all the associations seem to be not following the advice of the Trump administration or the advice that the trends that are happening in Europe regarding child sex changes. They're really digging their heels in and filing lawsuits and yada, yada, yada to support these very, very damaging and very harmful procedures.
So I have the letter up and it says providers should avoid relying on the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, that's WPATH, their
Mhm.
standards of care for the health of transgender and gender diverse people. And that's called SOCH 8, right? That's
That's
like
I mean, I can talk a little bit about WPATH if
sure,
you want
yeah,
me
let's
to
talk
explain
about
it.
that because when I'm sure people hear WPATH, so that's the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. So
Mhm.
yeah, you take the lead on that.
I think so. WPATH is an international organization that was originally started in 1979, and I guess it was like the last version, Standards of Care version 8, was very controversial. I mean, it's all controversial, but one of the points of controversy was it was discovered that Rachel Levin, a former HHS secretary for the Biden administration, was pressuring the organization to remove lower age limits for surgery. So basically saying there shouldn't be any age minimums for sex change surgeries. Why WPATH is so important, it's really, you have to understand a little bit about insurance and law and how all of that works. And so if you go on most insurance plans, I'm not going to say all, but I've read many, many insurance plans. If you go on to a hospital's website, a children's hospital website that has their procedures for child sex changes, I would say there's a very good chance you're going to find WPATH mentioned somewhere because they have created this clinical guidance. They call it the standards of care. And that really serves as the bedrock and the standard in which insurance companies, healthcare systems, schools are using to say these sex change procedures are quote unquote medically necessary. So they'll say, if a man wants a boob job, a man who thinks he's a woman wants a boob job, that's medically necessary, and that they'll cite often cite the WPATH standards of care. So that's why WPATH is such a big deal, is because they really are what has given some quote unquote credibility to the medical transgender complex, and they're cited throughout the world in law and insurance companies and healthcare policies. So
Look at all these symposiums they're going to
yeah,
have. Just put that up. They're going to be Germany, New Mexico, Mexico City, Mexico.
they are losing I believe there was an article, not by us, but talking about they're losing their members, how their membership is dwindling. But it's so the CAS review and the HHS report both addressed the fallibilities and the incredulous science used by WPATH to come to their conclusions. And so that is why this HHS letter from RFK, he's telling the medical community, like, hey, this is not good science. This is, President Trump's called it junk science that's supporting the surgical and chemical mutilation of children. I love that he wrote that executive order just calling it that and
Yes.
just saying what it is, because that's exactly what it is. It is the chemical and surgical mutilation of children based on junk science. So I think it's absolutely fantastic when you think about what President Trump campaigned on. This was one of the big issues. He said he was going to do what he could to stop child sex change. And I think that his administration is really taking very bold steps to do that. Now, it needs to be followed with law, it needs to be followed with state laws. I mean, obviously, it's great to see this happening, but you have to start somewhere. And I hope that this continues to raise awareness within the healthcare community for doctors to actually heed that letter and say, you know what, we really need to rethink what are
Yeah.
we doing? Because science is the scientific method is you have a question, you have a hypothesis, and then you do your experiments to see if your hypothesis stands. It's not the other way around. It's not like, well, we have a hypothesis, and so then we're gonna fudge the numbers and make our science fit our hypothesis. And I think that's exactly what's
Yes.
happening. You have these organizations saying, oh, cutting off a little girl's breast like saves her life. Like, no, it does not. It
Mhm.
sets her up for a life of regret and long-term trauma. And I think, I don't know exactly if there's data, but I've heard stories of people who they get these surgeries and then they end up more depressed. I think there was a study that came out a couple months ago or 6 months ago where they found people who had the surgery in the long term were more depressed, which makes again, it makes a lot of sense that if you've removed a healthy body part, that you're gonna have to have some deep, you're gonna probably have some deep regret later on.
Well, I think I have a couple of things to say, but I love that Trump called it junk science. And that's what we appreciate about President Trump, that he's not going to use big words. He's just going to talk like a regular person, like this is garbage. And that's what I could say a lot more eloquently. I was live streaming a school board meeting yesterday where people even on our side were like, I've got a PhD in this, I've studied that. And because of all these things, I know that men have, when it comes to athletics, they can overpower women, and that they have more muscle mass, and, all of the facts that men can overpower women in sports. It's like, you don't even need to say that. You don't need to say, I have an MD, so I can tell you. It's like, no, my lived experience. So they love to say, my lived experience is that men are physically stronger than women. That doesn't mean that they are emotionally stronger than women. That doesn't mean that women are less than men. It just means we're different, and that
I think just to add one thing. Oh, sorry.
Stronger.
I just want to say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying about difference, people need to stop thinking different means bad. It just means different. Doesn't mean bad.
I don't want to be married to a version of me. I want, you should complement each other. And that's the whole point of the balance, the yin and the yang that we, and I think talking to doctors, again, there are a lot of doctors and medical professionals in my family. Whenever there's some extreme fad, the number one advice is just balance. Don't eat too much sugar. Don't eat too much starches or breads. Like, don't do too much of anything. If you balance and you just do, you don't have to go to extremes if you don't want to. And I think that the science has gone to just this extreme. And what you said too about science, that the way that I grew up is that you came up with a hypothesis, just like you said, and then you were supposed to test it to prove it wrong. And when you finally got to that point where you can't prove it wrong, everything, like, then okay, this is a working hypothesis. We have attacked it. We've come at it from all angles. They have set up a hypothesis and said, you cannot prove it wrong. You can only prove it right. And if you try to prove it wrong, you are anti-science and you're a bad, evil person, and you're talking hate speech. I would put up the comments that I'm seeing right now. Just show, like, there's a couple of people that have gone on that are on with, Ukrainian flags, and just saying all these like terrible things. And again, it's the same old slurs, and you're a hate, as they say, paragraphs of hateful things. You're full of hate. You shouldn't be able to speak. We want to silence your speech because you're so full of hate, as they rant and they use swear words and slang and they say terrible things. And we don't respond in kind, just like in Philadelphia when we're attacked and we're called American girls by dudes in skirts dry humping a tree, dance around poles, and drag queens, and people just attacking us, trying to touch us and trying to like scare us. You're full of hate. And we're just standing there just like, we just want to go eat dinner. Like, think whatever you want. We just want to be able to raise our kids the way we would like. But they know you must participate. You can't you can no longer, and that's where it's the bridge too far. And that's why Trump won. And they have not learned the lesson that Americans, for the most part, are very tolerant, and they just want to live their lives. And they're fine. You want to say you're transgender, you want to wear a dress. It's not bothering me. You're not telling me what to do. Fine. But then they want you to use the pronouns. They want you to say, yeah, I'm a woman. And now they want your kids. And then they want to expose your kids very early to this ideology, in my opinion, to recruit, to prove their hypothesis that there are 10% of the population is trans. Well, that's not true.
Mhm.
Not genetic. This isn't genetic. This is a social contagion. So in order to prove their hypothesis, they're trying to insert the social contagion younger and younger and trap more kids into this to validate themselves. Adults trying to validate themselves,
Mhm.
trying to maybe there's even some nefariously that are predators and they're using an ideology to get to prey.
Mhm.
But it comes down to the same thing as COVID. Adults validating themselves through children, adults
Mhm.
putting their wants and desires and needs and feelings before the actual what's good for kids.
Mhm. And I think in COVID, I was thinking about this week, how it was really the vulnerable kids who got hit the hardest. It was
Yeah.
the kids who are most vulnerable, who had the most learning losses. It was the kids who were trapped in homes being physically abused, who are not going to recover. You know, the kids who had parents who were in stable homes, who could have extra resources to help them, were way more likely to make it through unscathed. So the same with this, it attacks vulnerable kids. And I think it's like, I have nothing, I'm actually driven by empathy for these vulnerable kids. That's what makes, and I'm sure you're the same way. Like that's what makes you stand up and say something. I remember going back to earlier in our conversation, when I first heard that Chloe Cole speech in the fall of 2022, I was wrapping up kind of all the COVID stuff. And I remember telling my husband, like, because I was doing a deep dive, like, I can't even believe what's going on. Like, I think I can take my newfound FOIA skills and start like uncovering things. And he's like, please, please don't do any more public records requests. Because I did public records requests for like 2 years. And I mean, there was always paper in our house, and I was always reading something. And I was always like, oh my gosh, fighting with these agencies. He's like, please don't submit. He's like, please don't submit any more FOIAs. Like, just walk away. I'm like, I don't think I can walk away. I don't think I can walk away. And it's because I was driven by love, by compassion, by empathy. Because you realize I'm like, how can I understand and know that in our country, 30 minutes away from where we were living, little girls are losing their right to be a mother, and they're not even a woman yet. They don't even understand. They have no clue what it means to be a woman or a mother. Like, how can we can't just sit back and be quiet about this? So any of this, if that's hate, I'm like, I think people just have very confused definitions of words.
I think that also our kids getting evidence-based high quality care at Planned Parenthood when they do a telehealth call and simply say, I feel like I'm trapped in the wrong body. I want to take puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. And through a telehealth conversation of 30 minutes, they're prescribed medicine. I would not call that evidence-based,
Mm,
high quality care.
mhm,
And if WPATH is not providing, and if the American Pediatric Society is too captured by political interest, um, then healthcare providers shouldn't rely on any organizations that are suppressing evidence or pushing a political agenda. And is that
mhm.
something that you've seen that there are that I think it's hard to imagine, but that there are activist doctors, there are
Well,
activist
oh,
medical
that's
associations.
not hard for me to imagine. I think it's hard to imagine. No,
Imagine.
I mean, one of the things I referenced earlier about Rachel Levin pressuring WPATH, and so a lot of that information came out because there was a lawsuit, Boe versus Marshall, in which they were investigating WPATH. I believe it was the ACLU filed a lawsuit trying to stop the bans on pediatric sex change, and all these emails came out showing that it was Rachel Levin, but then it also, in one of the amicus briefs they wrote, they said it was actually the American Academy of Pediatrics who, quote unquote, tipped the scales and got WPATH to move. And I feel like people like kind of walk past that yes, Rachel Levin used his political power to pressure WPATH, but they ultimately caved when the American Academy of Pediatrics stepped in and said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically was not going to give their support to these new standards of care unless they removed the age minimums for surgery. And so I actually, over like 6 months, did a series of FOIA requests, and I uncovered that it was just four doc that I uncovered kind of the other half of the conversation. So there were emails between with like Rachel Levin's kind of side of it, but then I was able to uncover emails showing that the AAP really just asked 4 doctors to review the standards of care, which is a very, when you think about how big an organization, I think they have like 67,000 pediatricians or something. It is a very small group. A lot of these medical organizations have these committees, which will be like their LGBTQ committee. And so these committees will be maybe 5 to 15
Yep.
people max, and they're steering these entire organizations. So yeah, if anybody wants to read it, there is I do on my author page have that story about the AAP and the FOIAs and their interactions with WPATH. I found it fascinating, but I'm quite fascinated by my people's emails. But to answer your question, it's absolutely happening.
Well, so I'm talking to my daughter today, and she is in nursing school in Florida.
Mm.
And she's like, Mom, you wouldn't believe last night she was studying, and in everything is you don't buy actual books anymore. You buy like you download the books, So she had her materials that she's reading, and in it, they didn't say breastfeeding, they said chest feeding.
Yeah.
And so she's like, here, I'm in nursing school, and they're not
Mhm.
using the term breastfeeding, even in Florida. So I'm like, send me the screenshot of that, because that you're in a state where you might be able to do something about that by exposing it. But imagine you're in nursing school and you're teaching these 20-year-old women, you can't say breast, you have to say chest. And
Doesn't that
chest,
just make you so mad as a woman? Like just like everything else aside, just as a woman who's like breastfed a baby, who's had to go through like having a period every month for decades.
yep.
I'm deeply offended.
It's insane. And then I reported yesterday, you reposted that again, the Democrats in the Wisconsin Assembly introduced 7 bills and a request for a proclamation for June 1st to be Pride Month. And in the language of some of the bills, so there was one bill, it was 164 pages, and over 379 times they had crossed out, redlined the word mother, and instead put persons who could get pregnant. And they took out breastfeeding, and it's um, persons who can breastfeed or chest feed, persons who get pregnant, persons who lactate, persons with a vulva, all of that language all throughout the bills that they were submitting. And when asked about it, one of the representatives said, well, some of the language is inartful. It's inartful. And
And artful. What's that even mean?
it means you caught us, but we're not going to do a darn thing about it. They were like, yeah, we're going to review that. No, they're not. That wasn't inartful. It wasn't a mistake. You don't make a mistake 379 times. And it and anything that said mother, breastfeeding, it wasn't just one single word. It was anything to do with motherhood or sex-based anatomy, all of that. So that wasn't a mistake. That was by design. And when they're caught, they say, oh, the Republicans are just making a big deal of a little mistake. It was inartful, and slide it under. And the media lets them.
Mm,
And because they know that this is a big deal, that people
mhm,
think you're crazy if
mhm,
you're going to say chest feeding. But this is a trend that will catch on. If you have all the nurses say chest feeding, and that's the only term you've ever heard as a child,
mhm,
breastfeeding, that they're going to change language. And
mhm,
we're going to be the last generation that uses the word breastfeeding. And that just can't happen. We cannot
mhm.
allow science to become woke, because then we're in real trouble. We're in big trouble.
Yeah, I think too, I mean, the interesting part of one of the most interesting parts I think of the last election with this issue is that Americans overwhelmingly reject it. Americans overwhelmingly are like, what is this? That's how when you first encounter, you're kind of like, huh? Like I referenced before, I mean, I think a lot of people don't even think it's real. You and I are very connected in this kind of online space, these conversations about these issues, but most people are just living their lives. They have no clue. Like I bet you if I went to swim practice later today and I asked like 10 moms, what's a chest feeder? They'd be like, what? What is that? So it really drives the point home, though, like you were saying about how small groups of activists are really trying to drive these changes in culture where we reject things that are very fundamental, like women breastfeed babies. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you could seriously could walk into. I mean, I was a nurse. I actually worked in maternity for a little while, and I can't imagine walking in with a new mom who's like totally in pain, who's exhausted, who just carried a child with her body for like 9 months. She just went through labor. She's gone through all of these super intense physical and emotional things that are so unique to being a woman. And it just is like a man will never understand that process. And then you're going to walk into the room and ask her after she's done all of that if she wants to chest feed her baby. I mean, it's so offensive. I am offended. I'm all offended, Scarlett. Thanks for reminding me of that now.
I'm going to put up this. I've been reading through the comments. So here, speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, defend the rights of the poor and needy. This is someone, Megan Mumper, who's been just putting all sorts of crap in my comment box. So I saw this biblical verse and thought, sorry, Megan, but actually, thank you for because I'm going to show you this whole proverb and we'll see what you think of this. Let's share this. I'm going to share the screen because I was just going to read it, but I like to show the receipts always. So here, it's for you, Megan. Is it showing up? Let me see. I'm going to get it on screen. Maybe I can't. All right, I'm going to read it. So this is Proverbs 31, the words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. What, my son, and what? The son of my womb. The womb, and the son of my vows. Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroys kings. So they know who women are. To go further down, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She bringeth forth her food from afar. She rises while it is not yet night and gives meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds the loins with strength and her arms with truth. She perceives that her merchandise is good. Her candle does not go out by night. She stretches out her hand to the poor. She reaches forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known as the gates when he sits among the elders. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue is the law of kindness. She looks well to the ways of her household, eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest above all. Favor is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. So just to know that maybe you should actually read the Bible before you put these quotes up. My grandfather was a minister, so as soon as I see something like that, I go straight. And and I read the original King James version. You can read in a different way, but that's the proverbs of a proverb of the good and faithful wife, the woman. And this is a woman who she's clothed in honor and dignity. Her children call her blessed. The people in the community tell her husband, "You're lucky. Look at your wife. She's constantly working for her family. She's working for her community, and she puts her hand out to the poor, yes, but she is a woman who loves her children, who is not running around. This is not the woman that is saying, I don't know what a woman is. I'm going to go chest feed. This proverb is the ultimate praise for femininity and for a strong, faithful, loving mother and wife and pillar of a community. When I grew up, it's everything that you aspire to be. And it doesn't mean that you're a homemaker, that you have to be a homemaker. It just means that that you do, as a woman, the heart of the home is a woman. The heart of a family is a woman. You are the heart, and so to say that Moms for Liberty isn't striving to live up to the virtuous woman is wrong. And to use that in an argument for transgender nonsense is ignorant, because this Proverbs clearly is about femininity. And there are other passages that talk about a male, a strong male, and that takes care of his wife, his family, that is a protector, that is a shield, that will, put his understand that his wife, the values, more than rubies, treat her that way. Treat her like there's nothing in the world more important and valuable than your wife. And taking care of your children, your name is everything as a man. And these are concepts that are foundational to human civilization prospering. You can believe other things, and I don't think that they are applicable to only Christians. I would venture to say, I mean, Proverbs is this is something in Judaism that's a tenet of Judaism, and even other religion, Hindu, Islam, have similar statements, value statements about men and women and their value and the importance of families and family structure. And that's kind of the thing that religion does. It tends to emphasize the importance of families and males and females and how they need to work together, that they're different, but they're equally valuable and important in the eyes of God. And, so I just had to say that. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but I think it's important.
Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, I would say just Sandra talking about family. I mean, I think I'd probably just say this. I probably have to run. But I think one of the things that really breaks my heart with all the gender ideology issues, and they are many. I mean, we could talk about. I've written about gender ideology in social services. There's gender ideology in medicine. There's gender ideology in schools. I mean, really all of our institutions. And they're all, in my opinion, really working together against families, against parents who want to acknowledge biological reality. And we've seen cases across the country where parents have lost their children to the state for telling their daughter, no, you're not a boy, you're a girl, and I love you, and I want to help you. I want to help you become the beautiful person that you are to its fullest extent. I mean, that's really the thing, is that gender ideology tells kids, it takes away their ability to be their full selves. And that is like one of the things that is just so sad. But it really, talking to parents, talking to grandparents who've had a child or a grandchild go through this, it is destroying families. It really is. It's pushing families to the limit. and it's creating just lifelong pain, and it's ruining this beautiful thing we have, a family. Family's beautiful. Family, unfortunately, so many people have not had an experience where family has been a blessing, but really it's intended to be people who are in your corner. And I think that's something that there's so many things to talk about. It's not really talked about enough, is the impact that this has on families.
So real quick, and I know you have to, but I mean, so can you imagine? Because you were a nurse.
Hmm.
Um, it's one thing for a parent to stand up to a teacher or a school counselor, but that says your child wants to use a new pronouns, new name, and they're identifying as non-binary or transgender. How does a parent, I mean, how does a parent stand up to a nurse, a doctor, a psychiatrist? I mean, how powerless must you feel as a parent when, these are in the profession, how can, especially, let's say you're a parent that you're a single mom
Mm.
and you don't have a college education, then you have a nurse and you're looking at them, you have all this knowledge, or a doctor saying, oh, this is no, you need to use the pronouns, you need to affirm. I mean, I can't imagine how hopeless you could feel, because they'll say this right in front of the kid. So the kid's like, yeah, mom, doctor says, or the nurse affirmed. So, and you know what? They'll probably kill themselves unless you do this. I mean, it's I think that parents are now more armed with knowledge,
Hmm.
but imagine 5 years ago,
Hmm.
they they didn't know anything. I mean, as a nurse, what do you think about that? I mean, that makes me very upset at what's happening in medicine because
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there is you talk about like levels of power and authority and how people are more likely to listen to someone who they perceive as having authority. There's a lot of psychological studies showing that. I think we saw that in COVID, right? We saw people wearing bandanas outside the middle of July because they thought it was going to stop an airborne respiratory. It wasn't doing anything. It was just making your face break out and so making it sweaty. That's all it did.
masks in cars.
I mean, so I think for parents, I mean, I have so much empathy for parents in that situation because I can't imagine how difficult it is. I mean, hopefully now, like you're saying, there are more resources, there's more information, but especially 5, 10 years ago, you're as a parent, you love your kid and you would do anything for your kid. And if you have someone stoking fear, I mean, that's essentially when someone tells a parent, oh my gosh, your child is going to commit suicide if you don't do this one thing. I mean, that is playing on a parent's worst fear, particularly because you feel like if you're at the point where you're seeing a physician or a psychologist or whoever about this, there's already a lot of strain in that relationship. You already know something's up with your kid and you're really worried about it and you don't know what to do. So then you take this poor parent who is already worried, who's already stressed. You have a child who is confused and obviously having a very difficult time. And then you put this other layer of pressure from these professionals. I mean, it's so hard, but I would tell a parent, like, fight for your kid. I mean, I think that as moms and dads, we have intuition. I think we live in a
Yeah,
society that trains us to ignore that, and I think that if you have a sense of, especially with this issue, take a pause. I mean, if someone is telling you to move towards sex change, I would say run, not walk out of that office. Get out of there and go
yeah.
find some better resources. I mean, that's step one. Just run and just know that there is an army of parents. I feel like they're kind of underground who have dealt with this issue and are really supporting one another to help fight for their kids. And it will be a fight. I mean, from the stories of parents, it's going to be the fight of your life, but it's your child, and there's nothing more in life that you could fight for.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's do no harm, and then there's state organizations.
Hmm.
I know there's I think Colorado for parental rights,
Hmm.
uh, and in California there's a bunch of organizations. So there's state level organizations, there's national organizations. Moms for Liberty. If you go to momsforliberty.org, well,
Hmm.
before you go off, I want to make sure that I put Vanner up to follow you. Make sure that you're following Meg. on X, because I just talked to you last week. Every week you have like a great article, and there's a lot of links in all of your articles. So just if you start clicking on the links, you could be there for hours, but you have all of the information there for parents to read, do the research, and then you're prepared, you're armed, you have the knowledge so that you can, if you're a parent and this is something that you're being told by a medical professional, you can print out this report. HHS did a report. You can look at some of the materials that Meg has posted. WPATH, there's reviews, there's more studies in the UK. Hopefully now under Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., there will be actual a fair analysis and study, more like what he's already done by the HHS, that debunk these myths about gender affirming care, and so that this can be in the dustbin of history. Although we should never forget and learn that how medicine can be captured and politicized and as used as a tool. I don't know, like what the end game goal of all of this. I think that's a whole another long discussion. But and a good book to read, it's older but still good, is Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier. And when she wrote this book, her book basically was groundbreaking. It really exposed what was happening. And you have to think, I think it was published in
2019, I think.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was 2000. So it was right. She was like ahead of the curve. I mean,
way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And so what you know there, and what she talks about, are the children that were going through the early social contagion among girls. It was usually girls that their parents were progressive. Their parents weren't like right-wing zealots. They were very progressive families in blue states. And they were like, yeah, we don't care if you're gay. We don't care about, but yeah, I don't think that you're a boy. Where is this coming from? Suddenly you went from girly girl to moody, depressed, locking yourself in the room, shaving off all of your hair, and now chest binders, and now you want to go through this medicalization. And she details how it happened, like many other social contagions, especially with teenage girls. And once you've read that, your eyes are like wide open. So I would recommend that highly. Well, thanks, Meg, for coming on. I'm sure you've got some other great articles in the works, and we'll talk again. I always learned.
There's always a lot to. Unfortunately, this ideology is so entrenched that there's always a lot to write about. I don't think it's stopping anytime soon. So thank you so much for having me, Scarlett. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And again, you work for the
Daily Caller News Foundation. Yeah, so if you want to go read, you can Google my name. I have on my Twitter bio, there's my author page. So most of my articles will come up there. Yeah.
Great. A lot of great work and more to come. I'm excited to see more of what you're doing, because I know some of the stories that you're working on, and I'm excited to see them because they're very relevant. And the next time we didn't even get to what I wanted to talk to you about, what's going on with Wisconsin, because the proof that there are the state departments of education are still seeking grants and federal dollars to pay for a lot of the stuff in schools. And it's not stopping, folks. Like, it's not going to just end. They're not folding up their taking down their tent and going away. They are entrenched, and they think that they've got the judiciary on their side and time on their side. And so this doesn't end for us, unfortunately. We have to keep fighting. All right. Thanks, Meg.
All right. Thanks, Scarlett.
Bye.
Bye.
That was a great conversation with Meg. Follow Meg at Meg Brock X, and of course should follow Moms for Liberty as well. Follow Moms for Liberty on X at moms4liberty. And then if you're going to join Moms for Liberty, we would love for you to do so if you are not already a member. Join Moms for Liberty at momsforliberty.org to learn more about gender ideology. Right now I have comprehensive sexuality education because that was our big focus for the month of May. And in previous, I think last month, we were focused on gender ideology. Restorative justice was another topic, critical race theory. And so there'll be a little summer break, and then we'll be back with Moms for Liberty. M4LU will be back in the fall, but there is a lot of great content. I'm sure that you haven't seen everything because every week there were interviews, there were book clubs, there was live streams, there was interactive town halls. So deep dives. Plus, what's great is when you go to m4lu.org and you go in the links, there are toolkits, and the toolkits are just loaded. And believe me, all the Moms for Liberty members have contributed. They'll send articles and all of this stuff and studies and resources and all of the receipts. So if you go to m4lu.org on any of the subjects, just click the toolkit and you'll find just a plethora of information. And there'll be also redirects to different YouTube channels and some of our great allies and the organizations that we work with. And so it's just amazing. These are great toolkits. And if you do not have a chapter in your state, in your county, consider starting one and becoming a chapter chair, or find one that is already that's nearest to you and contact. We have an interactive map on. I'll put that up. momsforliberty.org. I'll show that. So on momsforliberty.org, we've got a map of the country, and we have chapters in 48 states. So you can just click on your state and see if there's a chapter near you. And of course, you can become a national member and utilize the resources. We also have a summit that is open to all members and to everyone. I think you can attend the summit, which is in Orlando, October 16th through the 18th. It's amazing. It's fun. It's going to be at the Gaylord. So it's just this fabulous hotel. The rates are really good. And I believe this is the last week for early bird pricing. So you should check out momsforliberty.org and you can register for the summit in Orlando. And the summit, the Joyful Warrior Summit, is, if you've never been to a single Moms for Liberty event, you can attend that and you'll be welcome and you will feel at home, and you'll leave with a bunch of friends, and you'll be armed with a whole lot of knowledge and training and resources, and you'll be inspired. If you have been in Moms for Liberty for a long time and you're just feeling like, oh gosh, it's been a long 4 years, a long 5 years, 3 years, this is where you can go to recharge. For me, it's a time of recharging, being among friends that you haven't seen maybe for a year. You've only seen them through live stream and or text groups. So it's a way to become energized and to fill your cup up with joy, so that you have what you need to keep fighting. And I am a chapter chair. It's our last meeting. We had a lunch and we had a really good time. It's not always activism. It's some fellowship and celebrations. And one of our members, a friend was moving to another state, and we held a lunch, and we know that we'll stay connected. And so you're celebrating your friendships, you're celebrating each other, you get together outside of chapter meetings, you have your people. And it's a great thing to kind of have these friendships. You'll need them in everything that's coming ahead, and just to continue and get your kids together, play dates, and so lots of cool things. I'm really glad that Meg came on, and last time I'm there's a couple other things that I tend to, hold on a second, I'm going to, the last thing I did want to discuss, there are some things going on in Wisconsin. And I think that it's relevant because I know similar things are happening across the country. And I'll get to want to share. So, as I mentioned, there was a, sorry, just one second. I want to read this and get this all up. So, yesterday, Democrats had introduced a 164-page bill that strikes out the word mother 370 times. So I talked about that with Meg. And I'm going to read directly. Instead, using phrases like pregnant person. So it says in the bill, for testing of the bodily fluids of the infant, or where it would say expectant mother, pregnant person. Pregnant person, not. And I'm going to share this photo so you can see it for yourself.
Yeah.
So just one second, I'm going to find this. No. So it says that pregnant person, and then again in another line, pregnant person where it said expectant mother. And then line 7, where it says mother, it says person who gave birth to the infant. Person who gave birth to the infant. That's just crazy. That 379 times. 379 times to take out the word mother. That's insane. So I'm going to share this now. These 370 times. They've even removed the term breastfeeding, and instead they've called it person's breastfeeding. Person's breastfeeding and chest feeding. Yeah, because men can breastfeed, right? This isn't the party of science. This is the party of insanity. This is what happens when you're ruled by a radical left woke agenda. You can't even say the word mother. And you have to say pregnant person. You can't say mother. You can't say breastfeeding. You have to say chest feeding or persons who breastfeed. Thank goodness that Republicans have control of the Assembly and the Senate in Wisconsin. Otherwise, a bill like this would actually pass. Yeah, so that is not going to pass in Wisconsin. But there, but for the grace of God, go I. This is why Moms for Liberty has state legislative committees, and we have one in Wisconsin, because what we've realized is that the fight, the fight on local school board level, but a lot of policy and statute that governs what school boards, what their policy is going to be, or what they're going to do, or what the State Department of Education is able to do, or the policies that they're going to write, the limitations of the State Department of Education will be derived from statute and from legislation. And so we've got a state legislative committee. There several, I don't know how, I think we have at least 18 state legislative committees in Moms for Liberty. They're growing leaps and bounds. And one thing that we'll do on a state legislative committee is we will monitor what's happening in our state, in Wisconsin, our state assembly, and then state senate. And we'll go, we'll go there, we'll testify in bills, we'll write, we'll try to meet from both sides of the aisle, trying to meet with our representatives. And then again, awareness. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And in a press conference on this subject, when asked, the authors of some of the bills, there were 7 bills introduced yesterday, 7 bills in honor of upcoming June 1st Pride Month. 7 bills were introduced by the LGBTQIA plus committee, a Wisconsin committee. They mentioned that crossing out the word mother was inartful. Crossing out the term breastfeeding was inartful, and they're going to review it, which they are not. They are not going to review it. It was intentional. 370 times isn't an accident. They are erasing motherhood. They are erasing women. They are erasing everything that it means to be a woman, and say that a man can have that too. A woman who identifies as a man is not a man, in the same way that a man who identifies as a woman is not a woman. Biological sex is biological reality. You don't get to choose. That's something you don't get to choose. You can choose the way you want to dress. You can choose how you want to style your hair. You can choose whether or not you wear makeup. There's many things you can choose. But woman face, putting on a costume, doesn't make you what you're wearing. Halloween, if I dress as Princess Leia, I am not actually Princess Leia. I am pretending to be Princess Leia. You dress like a woman, you are pretending to be a woman. You are not actually a woman. You are in costume. You are a woman dressed like a man. You are pretending to be a man. You are not a man. You can never become a man. That is not possible. You can surgically alter yourself. That still does not change biology. That's just cosmetic surgery. And to say to children that, especially very young children who believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, children who, when my son was 3 years old, he really thought he was Spider-Man. He wanted to be Spider-Man so badly. He put on the full costume and he tried to climb up the stairs, and he webs, and using a using a jump rope as like a web like Spider-Man, and he fell and broke his nose. Okay. I didn't say, try again, because you really are Spider-Man if you believe that you are. No, he's pretending. Like, you have to be careful. And I'm not going to affirm that you are actually Spider-Man. So that is the beautiful and wonderful and magical mind of a child who does not yet fully grasp abstract concepts, and to take advantage of their, their innocence and their gullibility, their naivete, that they're naive, to take advantage of that they're just kids. Their brains aren't fully developed. In fact, most brains aren't fully developed in their 20s, like really. And so to take advantage of children is, at least until about 5 minutes ago, it was considered monstrous. You were considered a monster. A monster takes advantage of children. A monster steals innocence. These are not, there's no way around. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. If you are intentionally taking away the innocence of children and injecting ideology and ideas with the intent of separating children from their families and their parents, just because you're pissed that Trump won an election, you are becoming a monster. You are not a good person. That is not what a good person does. And soul searching needs to happen. I may not like that there are others that half this country, or a little less than half, voted in a way that I didn't agree with. That doesn't give me the right to brainwash their children. That doesn't give me the right, because I don't like their views. It doesn't give me the right to inflict mine on their children in the overt attempt to achieve an end that I could not otherwise achieve. Because everyone knows, you don't have to be a political scientist, which I am, to know that the number one determinant of political ideology and worldview and values are parents and families. Parents are the number one drivers of, and the culture in which you raise your children and the values you instill. That when a child reaches, by the time a child is, I say a child because I have children in their 20s, but in their early 20s, like whatever political ideology or worldview that they develop by that time, there's a 70% chance that will be the ideology they hold throughout their entire life, knowing that there are experts who are using their knowledge and their skills for nefarious purposes. They are intentionally trying to brainwash kids so that, what's the best way to stop what they would say MAGA or Moms for Liberty? What's the best? Get to their kids, brainwash their kids in the classroom where they are present for 8 hours a day, and then add on top of it that there's social media and there's the culture, everything. It can feel like for parents, everything is working against them if you are a parent that is inclined to be more traditional. You don't have to be conservative. You could just be a parent that wants to raise children in a more traditional manner. And there are progressives that would like to raise their kids in just a little more, they're more protective. They're not going to give their kids a phone right away. They don't want their kids on screens all the time. They will protect their kids from sexual content, and they could be very progressive, but still have some traditional values. They could be Catholic and progressive and still maintain some quasi-traditional values. And they are not, that's the reason why the numbers are 70%, 79% of America disagrees with gender ideology. They disagree with this new terminology where you erase motherhood. I mean, it's probably higher than that. Even people that say they're for it, I think they're just virtue signaling. there's a very small minority of folks that think that you should cross out the word mother and put persons who get pregnant. So anyway, so getting back to the bills that are being introduced, Wisconsin is just trying to follow the lead of Colorado, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, California, and they're trying to codify into statute certain things that make it very, very difficult, very, very difficult for even a conservative school board to overcome. And it can also become difficult working, with the federal government. And that's why one thing real quick to discuss, and this was sent to me by the legislative aide of my friend Amanda Nedweski, and she was a Moms for Liberty leader in Kenosha County. She was a co-chair, and now she is an elected assembly member. She's now serving her second term. She's awesome. And she chairs an accountability committee in Wisconsin that's very similar to DOGE, in which she is reviewing spending bills, looking over language, and able to point out sort of the radical progressivism. She's also a person who reaches across the aisle to get things done, especially for children. She does everything that she can to get meaningful, good legislation, particularly legislation that will protect women, families, and children. And she numerous times will reach across the aisle to do so. She's a conservative, a strong conservative, but she's wise and prudent and trying very hard to be effective. And that's the difference between Moms for Liberty, moms who go into office, who take higher positions. We have for so long dealt with, various, all sorts of people with school boards. I mean, we raise children too, but that I think that we're very effective at getting things done because we don't get caught up in the minutia. We're trying to we're willing to extend the olive branch as long as we're not compromising our values. We want to see real wins. We want to see real policy, and Amanda really worked hard to in Wisconsin to provide phonetic-based learning for all Wisconsin students. Our NAEP numbers are abysmal. They are awful. I think we're ranked 48th in the country as far as reading proficiency and math proficiency. And yet like in many other states, what can you do? How can you fix this problem when all that you when one side just simply give us more money and we're not going to tell you how we're going to spend it, and when bills are passed for phonetic learning and the funds are going to go for activist training, which we don't need more of. We do not need more activists. We don't need more DEI specialists. We need more reading specialists, math specialists. We need more school resource officers. We don't need more. We don't need more DEI. We don't need more SEL. We don't need more woke counselors. We need resource officers. We need reading specialists. We need more teachers. We need more boots on the ground in classrooms. They just want more administrators and activists. And that's really at the heart of what's ailing education. And the fad learning, all of the fads, and instead of direct instruction and a focus a focus on basically going back a little bit, to the direct instruction model. I follow Daniel Buck, Beanie. There's a lot of great new organizations of former teachers and current teachers that are modeling. I just went to a school board summit at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and they brought in national organizations from around the country to talk about what works. It was a solution-based all-day conference that was not about discussing culture war issues. It was about what will work. How can we fix the problems that we're seeing in schools? How can we raise our literacy standards? How can we deal with the growing issues with discipline as a result of restorative justice? So it was a great conference because it was really focused on with great figures and it wasn't even briefly touched on school choice. It was really about how do we fix this? Knowing that in a state, there are many states like Wisconsin where we do have a school choice program and a charter program, but it's very limited in scope, and it's primarily in order to benefit from the Wisconsin Choice program, it's for low-income families. So that dispels the lie where they say, oh, choice is just for rich kids to go to private school. In Wisconsin, that is not the case at all, because there are income qualifications that are so stringent that even a lot of parents I meet that have multiple children and they are barely getting by. They are too wealthy to be able to utilize the school choice program. So it's a program that is geared to become a life raft for families that are trapped in particularly Milwaukee public schools. And our choice program does not even extend out to the rural areas, and that is the case across the country. I talk with folks across the country. Choice, because there are rarely a lot of private schools in rural areas. In rural areas, the public school is the only option other than homeschooling. And so we at Moms for Liberty, we need to fix public education. We support school choice, we support charter schools, but the reality is the majority of American kids are going to go to a public school. So we cannot turn our back on public education and shrug our shoulders and just say, oh, they woke, we out. Nope, you can't do that. Can't do that. Also, these are the kids that our kids are going to marry. These are the kids that are surrounding our kids in the neighborhood. You cannot isolate yourself. You need to be involved. Don't think that, protect your kids, homeschool if you can, if it's really bad, obviously, but don't disengage from your community. Don't stop attending school board meetings. Don't think, my kids are in private school, my kids are homeschooled, I don't need to go to the school board meetings. We really need you, and your voice is, because you have nothing to fear. Your kids, there's not going to be retaliation against you if you're homeschooling. So great, come and speak. You're a taxpayer. You have children that are school age. The other side will tell you, oh, your kids don't go they go to private school. Your kids are homeschooled, or your kids are grown. You don't get to have a voice. Don't listen to them, because I sit through countless school board meetings where they bring in activists that don't even live in the state, where they constantly have grandmothers speak on behalf of their taxpayers in that district. Grandmothers speak, they have kids speak, they have, they don't follow the rules that they are going to demand that you abide by. They have a whole different set of rules, and yet they'll have this standard for you. And then you'll think, oh, I can't speak because I don't have kids in the school district. No, you can speak. You're a taxpayer. Half of your property tax money and a good portion of your state and even your federal taxes will go to fund the public education in your community. You have every right to have a say in it, and you will be paying the bill if you don't. So you might as well stand up. You might as well speak up. And frankly, like, it would be awesome, because there are a lot of parents that fear that if they say something, their children will face retribution. And lots of times that fear is unfounded. I will say this. Lots of times it's better to stand up than it is to stay quiet. But there are times where that fear is legit. And my friend Nicole in Illinois knows that. For like her child, she had to pull her kid out of the Deerfield School District because she stood up, and the retribution was swift. But that only makes it more important that residents of Deerfield come speak and support her and have her back. Because if you bring a crowd in with you to support you, your likelihood of success is far greater. And at the very least, that there will be, it does change things. It will stop a more radical school board from becoming more and more, ever increasing more radical. They might take some steps that they wouldn't have before, and everything makes a difference. You may not see it right away. Conservatives like the ROI, you want to see the return right away. But sometimes the investment, this is a long-term thing. You're building a city you may not even see. That's the way I look at it. I am in a marathon, not a sprint. This is a generational fight. This isn't next year, the year after. Like, we have to look at things 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. That's the way the progressives envisioned education. It didn't happen all at once. It happened over a very long period of time. And change will come slowly, then all at once. And but we do have President Trump, and we have Linda McMahon as Secretary of Education, which is great. It is especially great if you are in a state with an awesome governor like Kim Reynolds. Like, real work gets done. You live in Florida, Ron DeSantis is your governor. Awesome. You live in Texas, and Governor Abbott is your governor. Their monumental changes in education policy are happening right now. So that's the good news. And in states like Wisconsin, we are kind of in a détente because we have divided government. So things aren't getting worse, but they're not getting better. We lose a majority in our Assembly and Senate. We're going to see rapid decline, rapid changes. And in Illinois, it's crazy town. Colorado, crazy town. Washington State, crazy town. California, crazy town. And these are going to be the states, they already are states that the Trump administration is focusing on. And we're going to, wait and we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of this is going to go to the courts. And we're going to see what happens when Trump fulfills his promise and he starts to sanction and pull funding from school districts that are not abiding by the federal law and what I think the Constitution, and that are openly defying Title IX in particular. So there's a lot for us to watch, and I think there'll be good news and there'll be hard days. It'll be a little bit of a roller coaster. Also, we know that, so it's Friday right now, and Friday, May 30th, and so June 1st is Sunday, and that starts Pride. And as I've been telling my team, things are about to get real crazy. So we're going to see a lot of the last few weeks of school. Usually, it's a lot of that's already started, but you'll see, I'm going to start to get my inbox flooded with parents telling me this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. That's going to happen all over the country, even in red states. And we're going to see the Pride Parades again and the Drag Queen Story Hours again. And so, and tomorrow, so I'm going on Fox and Friends tomorrow to discuss a reimagining of June 1st to reflect something that's more positive and meaningful for parents, for traditional parents. And so that we can, turn the page on the radical, on Pride Month, which has now become Radical Gender Ideology Month. I mean, it's not Pride Month. It's Radical Gender Ideology Month. It's Trans Month. It becomes all about identity politics. It becomes all about the trans movement because the trans activists have overtaken the whole LGBTQIA plus. It used to be LGB, but the trans radicals have taken over that entire movement. And so the agenda is one of normalizing sex change operations, normalizing kids very young claiming that they were born in the wrong body, normalizing this gender expression, and kids identifying as whatever the heck they want to. And every identity has to be celebrated, and allowing kind of infusing into our culture this belief that even young children have the ability to consent to adult decisions. And you may think, I'm just trying to be kind. I'm going to affirm Becky, who now wants to be called Brad, and she's 8. That's a kind thing to do. I'm going to let her make that decision. How much longer till Becky says, well, I'm in love and it's with an adult. I get to consent. If you think that's crazy, you're wrong. Because 10 years ago, if I would have told you that schools are actively socially transitioning 8-year-olds secretly, they're allowing 8-year-old kids to identify as transgender, change their clothes in a special closet, go by different names and pronouns, and secrets are being kept from parents, you would have thought I was insane. You would have said, you're a tinfoil hat wearing gal. So if you don't think that the normalization of what they call adult child love is next, you're wrong. That is the end game. The end game is to turn children into consenting adults. And when that happens, that's like end of days kind of thing. That is a society that is so evil and corrupt that, civilized society starts to completely come apart when that happens, when children are no longer protected. And in states like Colorado, they aren't. In the name of protecting children, they are removing young kids from their loving parents and placing them in homes with trans affirming caregivers. And the kids are suffering abuse, and everyone turns a blind eye because gender ideology cannot be wrong. It, again, like we said with Meg, it's a hypothesis that can't be wrong. And we're going to hide any evidence that it is. They're going to sweep under the rug the abuse because that just feeds into the right wing talking points. So we have to hide it. There comes a point where you can't hide anymore. And usually they go over the top over June, and the mask comes off, and normal people are appalled. And I have a suspicion that will happen again. We'll see. We'll see if it's toned down, but it doesn't seem to me that a lot of lessons have been learned. That's it for today. And I hope you have a great weekend. I know that I plan to have a really good weekend, and that I am traveling to Washington, D.C. on Sunday. So I will be doing some live streams from D.C., and I will be on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning between 6 and 10. So, when I have something more specific, I will post it on social media, but I am very excited, and hopefully I don't get bumped. But I'm excited to be on Fox and Friends. They're wonderful to work with, and hoping that I get to see Rachel Duffy, who's amazing. I love her. So have a good weekend, everybody. God bless.